Good evening and welcome to Garblag Games. We're back on Wednesday, not Warhammer Wednesday at the moment. We're back for some Marvel Multiverse superhero role-playing game. We're going to be using the new game that came out recently. You might have seen us play it on the play test a year or so ago, but we're going to go through and we're going to do some character creation tonight. We're going to do a little bit of adventuring while we wait for the Cataclysm of Kang campaign to come out in the middle of November, and then you're going to see these lovely players battle against Kang the Conqueror in his attempts to overthrow Earth 616 in the multiverse. So before we get started, I am going to go around the horn. I'm going to ask each of my players to introduce themselves and to tell us their favorite Marvel superhero or supervillain. So we are going to start with Dan M. You're on the spot.
Oh no, I'm really on the spot. Good evening, everybody. I'm Dan. Thank you very much for having me here tonight for a bit of Marvel superheroes. And I would have to say my favorite Marvel superhero would have to be Deadpool.
Deadpool's a classic. I love Deadpool. A lot of fun. Rob Liefeld creation from back in the 90s. Dan P.
Dan P. That's me. Hi everyone. I'm Dan.
Double Dan.
Of the P variety. And my favorite Marvel superhero, it's not really a superhero technically speaking, but it's Iron Man. Always been Iron Man. Even since I was a wee lad watching the older Marvel stuff on TV with all the original Spider-Man stuff. Always loved Iron Man. He's so great.
I love it. I love it. And then down at the bottom, everybody at home, you'll notice that Jim is blank. He will be joining us next week. So we're very, very, very happy to have Jim back and his own brand of wackiness as we begin our adventures. So we will dive over to Roger.
Hi, I'm Roger, and my favorite Marvel superhero it's probably also Deadpool. I just love his sass mouth. I'm not really a Marvel expert. If it's not in a film, I don't know anything about it. Or the old X-Men cartoons. I did watch those back in the 90s.
Fair enough. I like it. And last but not least, Stu.
I am Stu. I have to say, I think my favorite Marvel. You see, I can't decide between two. One is the Punisher, for obvious reasons, the extreme violence, etc. And I think the other one has to be Captain America, just because. I don't know. It's just something about that sort of libertarian values and all the rest of it. You know, it's just so over the top, isn't it? Captain America's brilliant for that. And I think for me, he represents the old school of superhero.
And it's our GM.
Yeah,
good old Cap.
And yeah, exactly. And I'm looking for brownie points from the GM.
You may survive now. You may make it. I don't know. Cap goes all the way back to like Timely Comics, even before it was Marvel Comics. We've had Dan pipe in with a change. Dan.
Yeah, having come off the spot a little bit and having a bit more time to think about it, I want to change mine to Ghost Rider, please.
Johnny Blaze, or at least the original Johnny Blaze, the Ghost Rider. Fantastic. Good time. Demon of Vengeance. I love it. All right, so now that we know who our players are and we have an idea of where their comic mind likes to lead itself, we're going to talk a little bit about the system, and then we're going to dive into character creation. So like I said, this is a relatively new system. Matt Forbeck wrote it. It's a very interesting take on Marvel Comics and the players and the characters, and I really like the cinematic action feel of it. You only need 3 dice to play this game, 3 6-sided dice. So it's a dice sum versus a difficulty number pool, where you roll your 3d6, you add those up, you add them to a stat-based modifier. And if you exceed the difficulty number for a skill check, or if you exceed the defense during combat, you succeed. One of the interesting notes on this is there's a unique dice. One of your 3d6, if you're not using the Marvel dice, you should have it as a different color because that is your Marvel dice. And if it rolls a 6, you get a fantastic success. So something amazing has happened. It could be a fantastic success even if you failed your skill check. So you failed to do what you wanted, but something awesome still happens. Or it could be a fantastic success where you succeed, where you help the DM decide what amazing thing happens. Or if you're in combat, you just do a lot more damage. On the flip side, if you get a 1 on the Marvel dice, that's bad. Just like in any other game where you've got critical successes and critical failures, a 1 on the Marvel, well, I take that back. It's not bad. It's better. A 1 on the Marvel dice is your fantastic success, and a 6 on your Marvel dice is a 6. So a 1 on that one particular dice counts as a 6. I know it sounds confusing, but stick with us. When we roll, you'll see how it works. So you actually have a better chance of getting a higher roll because the Marvel dice is 1 is effectively a 6.
Okay.
Unless you roll a double 1 where you roll 2 dice.
Yes, but we'll get into that. So the mechanics are pretty simple, but there are some nuances in them. And a couple of the nuances are when you have an edge to a check or trouble on a check. And an edge is where you've either got a power or ability or the circumstances that you're working in give you an advantage. And when that happens, you roll your 3 dice. You take the lowest dice you got, and you get to re-roll it if you've got an edge. And then you take the better of those 2 rolls. So the re-roll doesn't penalize you even if you get worse on the second roll. The flip side of that is trouble. Something is making it harder for you to succeed. Same thing happens. You roll your 3 dice, but you have to re-roll your highest dice and take the worst result. You can have multiple edges, you can have multiple troubles. And if you've got an edge and a trouble, they cancel one another out. If you're confused already, fantastic, because that's the way we should always start a session 0. As we get into the play, you'll see how this works, and it's fairly simple when you really get the hang of it. There are other options in combat, and we'll go through that when we get to our first actual combat. But for now, those are the basics. Now, for everybody watching at home, we are using Roll20. It is the supported VTT for the Marvel Multiverse role-playing game. And they've actually done a very good job of setting it up for character creation. It does make it very easy. It allows for the dice rolls to be made fairly simply. And we will be using this for character setup. We're going to be using it for our initial adventure that I wrote that's really not part of the process. And then as we go into the actual Cataclysm of Kang campaign, we will be continuing to use it. And you'll be able to see what we're doing in the window here on our screen. Any questions before we get started? Okay, I've assigned everybody a character sheet. So go ahead and open yourself up the character sheet, and where it's going to start out, when it opens up, it's going to say character builder in the bottom right-hand corner. Go ahead and hit that button, and it's going to go into the ranks. Now, in this game, there are 6 ranks, and they define a hero's relative power level and or his ability to impact the world around him. So rank 1, these are for the most part, almost your normal human beings who are just doing something heroic. Think Misty Knight, the Night Nurse, an average shield agent. These are your rank 1 characters. They have some abilities and some skills and some training, but they're not necessarily really super heroic at that point. We will not be starting our characters at rank 1. Rank 2 is the next level, and this is where you get to the street level fighters. You know, they're the protectors of like an area of a city. You know, think Luke Cage and Iron Fist, that power level. This is where we're going to be starting our characters. Now, I will tell you this, as we work our way through the Cataclysm of Kang, we're going to go from rank 2 to rank 6. So we're going from street level fighters to cosmic level defenders by the time we're all said and done. So you're going to, everybody at home, you're going to get to see how these power levels scale and what it means to go through each rank. But with starting at rank 2, if you hit the rank 2 button, everyone then starts with 10 ability points. Now, ability points go into your actual stats. Now, this is a Marvel game, and they very cleverly made your stats spell out Marvel. The M is for might, the A is for agility, the R is for resistance, the V is for vigilance, the E is for ego, and the L is for logic. Now, they bear a striking resemblance when you get into the descriptions of them to other stat schemes you've seen, you know, strength, intelligence, wisdom, dexterity, constitution, charisma, etc. But they do play a sort of unique role here in Marvel. So stick with us when we go through that. In addition to the 10 ability points, all players get 8 power points. Now, when you select powers at rank 2, obviously you can't select a power that is from rank 3 or higher. And there are other prerequisites for powers. So we'll get into that as we slowly build our characters and we get an idea for who they want to be. So if everybody selects rank 2 and then hits the next button, it's going to bring up your basic ability score point directory. Now, there are additional stats that feed off of your allocated ability scores. Focus is like your mental strength, your ability to use powers drains focus, some of them. Speed is literally that, how fast you are walking, running, climbing, web slinging, swimming, flying, etc. However you move is related to your speed score. Initiative is exactly what you would expect it to be. It feeds off of your vigilance score, and it's how fast you react in a combat situation or an emergency situation. And then health, think of as your hit points. When you take damage, it comes off of your health. So when you're looking at a rank 2 character with your ability scores, you've got 10 points to spend, and no one score can be above 5 at rank 2. Now, a couple of our players, they worked a little bit ahead before we were starting this session. So while Roger and Dan think about how they would like their characters statted out, I will have Dan P start, and then Stu follow up on explaining how you laid out your ability scores, your Marvel, for your characters.
Okay, yeah, cool. Hi, everyone. So I kind of had an idea of what I wanted to play. So my stats very much mirror that. It's something I'm probably getting a bit known for on Garblag Games, playing sort of the melee-based character. But here we go. So, and the M stands for melee, by the way, not might.
Melee, sorry. You're right.
So I'm melee. So I've got my first score is melee, and that's 3, which is how effective I am in close combat. Agility, which is more ranged combat, I have left it at 0 because we're still fairly close to normal human levels. However, where my character ramps up is resilience. I am resilience 4, which gives me 120 hit points, which feeds into the characters we get through this character building. You'll see what the character is. And then vigilance 3. Again, his background should suit a high vigilance, and then ego and logic are both 0, so he's normal human levels for those kind of things. But yeah, that's his stats as he's statted at the moment.
Fantastic. And Stu, what do your stats look like?
Well, I've gone for something a little bit more cerebral, so quite literally, and basically my character is going to be a psionic sort of navigator, if you like, and so I've selected stats that sort of reflect that as I sort of see it. Melee is actually -1. I've knocked 1 off there. I really am quite useless in a fight when it comes to a fist fight. Then agility is 1, so slightly above average. Fairly agile. Resilience is 2, so you know, to take a hit or two, but not nothing, not to the extent of the huge night there. Vigilance 2, again, slightly above average, pretty aware of what's going on around her. It is a her, by the way. I decided to play a she, so that should be interesting for everyone to role play with. And I've decided on the ego is 1, so nothing great above there on the willpower, but the logic is, the intelligence is the bit that drives a lot of the psionics, and my logic is 5. And I've also, you'll see as well that ties in with some of the choices of powers and tags as well, as when we do that in a bit. So very heavily weighted towards brains. Let's see if I can role play it.
I'm sure you'll do just fine, Steve. So, Raj, Dan, M, you guys have any ideas? You have questions?
I think I'm done.
Okay, so what are your thoughts? What are you looking at?
So Mele 0, again, it's not really his thing. Agility 5.
All right.
As he's supposed to be very shooty and very sneaky, and good at getting out of the way and generally trying to avoid being hit, because his resilience of 0 means that it definitely wants to avoid being hit. Vigilance 3, so he's pretty quick thinking on his feet and good at spotting things. An ego of 2, he's pretty good at chatting to people, and a logic of 0.
All right.
Just kind of average human.
Fantastic. And Dan M, what are your thoughts? Or do you have any questions?
So far, I've gone with a melee of 0, an agility of 0, resilience 1, vigilance 3, ego 1, logic 5 to make 10.
Fantastic. So we've got 2 very cerebral characters. We've got one who it looks like may be focusing on some ranged attack with a high agility, and we've got one who is focused soundly in melee combat with a high melee score. Thank you for correcting my might versus melee. This is the problem you get when you run and play in too many systems. And the fact that I'm really old, so I'm kind of senile, it throws a monkey wrench in everything I do. So please correct me at all times when I screw up, either here live or in chat or on YouTube later, because I take all of the horrible insults with a grain of salt, as an old Army interrogator always should. Also joining us next week will be Jim. Jim has told me that he's thinking about playing someone more Hulk / The Thing arena, so he may be someone who's got a high resilience, a high melee as well, but we'll see. He's got a week to change. And I've also told all of our players, if they want to change up their character concept between this week and next week, they obviously can. But once you're done allocating your points, your attribute points, in your character development, then particularly if you're doing it in Roll20, like I said, they really did a fantastic job setting this up in Roll20. All you got to do is hit the next button. And it brings you up to Origin. Now we're getting into, in the book, what they get into is the backstories, and the first part of backstory is origins, and this is classic Marvel tropes. And I'm going to list out the origins for everyone. You can be an alien, and this is an alien that's from one of the off races, not one of the major races, like Groot or Rocket Raccoon are technically considered aliens, but they're not from major alien races. Then you've got alien Kree, which are from the Kree Empire, and anybody who's been watching Marvel Cinematic Universe has an idea of what the Kree Empire looks like. The actual Kree are blue-skinned. Then you have the alien Shi'ar. Now, these are for your Marvel X-Men fans out there. They're an humanoid avian race. A very powerful empire. Deathbird was an empress of it. Lilandra, who ended up becoming closely involved with Professor Xavier as a member of the race. You have the alien Skrull, which, once again, if you've been watching the MCU, are the green if you watched Black Panther Wakanda Forever, are typically blue-skinned amphibians, unless you are the first mutant in Marvel, Namor the Submariner, and then you're a hybrid between Atlanteans and humans, and a powerful mutant. You have deviants. Once again, in the MCU, they were horrible dinosaur/dragon-looking beings in the Eternals movie, but in the comics, they are just a humanoid offshoot of the experiment that caused the Eternals. So you could be a deviant. Then you also have Eternals, which, once again, are the synthetically created life forms that the Celestials created, and you saw those in the MCU movie, The Eternals, if you watched that. You've got high tech. That's where we get your Dr. Octopuses, your Mysterios, your Trapsters. They're people who rely on technology for their gadgets and gadgeteering. You've got high-tech android. These are your synthetic humans. These are your Ultrons, your Visions, your original Human Torch from the Invaders. All of these are androids. Then you've got high-tech battlesuit. That's where we get into Iron Man and the like. High-tech cybernetics. And this is anybody who's got any kind of biomechanical implants. Technically, Wolverine in this game system falls under that because of his adamantium-laced bones, but you could also have people like Cyber, any of the Marauders from the X-Men. You could even make a case for Warlock being alien slash high-tech cybernetics because of his abilities in the technocracy. Then you've got high-tech PIM particles. And if you, once again, MCU, Ant-Man, you know what a PIM particle is. It's the particle that allows you to become really small or really big. Followed up by the Inhumans, which are artificially created superpowered people. They had from what I understand, a very bad TV series that I did not see, but Black Bolt, Medusa, Karnak, all of these are examples of Inhumans. If you watch the S.H.I.E.L.D. TV series, Quake was an Inhuman. Then you've got magic. And this is broken down into chaos magic, demonic magic, sorcery. And that's your Ghost Rider, your Doctor Strange, your Clea, your Brother Voodoo, your Damian Hellstrom. Anybody who uses magic as part of their power or is a magical creature would fall into the magic category. You've got monstrous. That's like your vampires, Blade, Baron Blood. You've got your werewolf monstrous creatures. Those are your werewolf by night. A few other lycanthropes running around the Marvel Cinematic Unit or the Marvel comic books. And then you've got the big one, mutant. Those are people with the X gene. You've got mythic. These are your Asgardians, your Olympians, your fairies, your fae, etc. And then you've got special training. These are basically your humans who just have really advanced training. So you'll find those are like Shang-Chi.
Black Widow.
Black Widow.
Yeah.
Like I say, Black Widow would probably be special training / technology because she uses like her Widow or Venom Blast. But yeah, she would definitely fall in that. Black Widow, Shang-Chi, a lot of those where you're really a human being, but you've got special training that's allowed you to compete on a higher level. Hawkeye, special training.
Nick Fury, Punisher.
Nick Fury, yes, absolutely. Spirit of Vengeance. This is your Ghost Rider. This is you're possessed by a spirit that gives you supernatural abilities. Symbiote. Any fans of Venom, Carnage, Null? All of these symbiotes. If you wanted to play a symbiote, you could be infested by one. Unknown, this is where you just decide you don't want to pick any one of those backgrounds. You're going to be something else and nobody's going to have defined it yet. Weird science, this is where you've been affected by some sort of scientific process. This is your Promethean man, your Dr. Frankenstein scenario. So we're talking Captain America, Luke Cage, all of this super soldiers who had super soldiers serum injected into them is the weird science caveat. And then the final one is weird science gamma mutate. This is the Hulk. Doc Samson, She-Hulk, the Abomination, the Leader, anybody who was mutated by gamma energy, and that's not the same as gamma radiation in the real world, becomes a gamma mutate. So, of all of the backgrounds, we are going to once again go back to our characters who have already started their character, and we'll go with Dan P. What background did you pick?
So this was a tough one because I felt that he didn't really fit into a lot of them. The closest one would have been a magic type, because while he himself is not magic, where a lot of his abilities come from are. But in the end, I went with what I call supernatural, but it's unknown.
I like it. I like
so
it.
It's supernatural in its basis, but it is unknown in that it doesn't fit into any of the one categories.
Fantastic. And I will say this, when you're building characters in this system, when you pick a background, not only does it give you examples of the characters that would fit this background, it also potentially gives you traits, which are another part of character creation that help define who your character is, tags, which also help define who your character is, and potentially powers that you are required to take to fall within that background. For instance, if you picked symbiote background, in other words, you have a symbiote bound to you, you automatically get the following traits. Anathema. You are take additional damage from extreme heat or extreme sonics, extreme noise, like you see in the Venom movie or the comics. And then you automatically have to take the following powers: environmental protection and mighty one. So that's the baseline for symbiote. Every symbiote has those. So it gives you an idea. So backgrounds aren't just a simple name that you tack onto your character. They have mechanical as well as story components to them. So Dan is an unknown melee combatant.
I'm gonna change that because I'm just reading through them, and actually mythic. I'm gonna go mythic, but not mythic Asgardian. I'm just gonna go plain mythic because his character is a mythical character of legend, and it also has supernatural tag, which is what I wanted. So I'm gonna go with mythic instead and take the supernatural tag.
Good change. So with mythic, yes, the tags are supernatural, and suggested occupation is outsider. Now it's just a suggested occupation. When we get to occupation, you're not required to take that. Stu, how does your incredibly intelligent female character, what kind of background did she pick?
Well, I decided, I was looking at it. I'm a big fan of the Guardians of the Galaxy films, and one of the aliens on there is a sort of reddish pink color, and they do sort of appear not as any of the main characters, but they're always, there's lots of minor characters that are in there, and these are Krylorian. So I chose Alien, Other, as it were, the first one, which is none of the major races. And so Krylorian, and this involved tags of alien, obviously, and extreme appearance, which is, again, okay, it's not sort of gnashes and horrible tentacles or anything like that, but she is bright pink, basically.
Nice.
And the idea being that she came to Earth 616 on some form of mission, basically.
Fantastic. I like it. Roger, Dan M, ideas, thoughts, questions?
My question is, I've only got the option of like 6 origins, whereas you listed absolutely loads. I only see high-tech PIM, inhuman, special training, and unknown, and weird science.
That is odd, because I see them all.
I had this problem when I was doing the character build as well. I can only have access to a few of them.
Yeah, because the ones you were listing out, I got, because I was thinking, is it mythic? Because again, I'm playing a character of myth and legend.
Mythic proportions.
Let me take a look. I'm going to pull your character sheet up right now, because when I pull up mine, I can see everything. So let me just see. And this search, if we're having some Roll20 hiccups, then what we can do is I can try to go back in and edit them later.
You
But
can manually edit them anyway. So if you pick
Yeah.
one, and then when you get to your final character sheet,
And
it'll
can you have
appear
more than one?
origin.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is
yeah,
possible,
you can.
yeah.
You absolutely can. At the top of the search bar, have you tried typing in the origin you're interested in and see if that'll
Does
pull it
nothing
up?
comes up.
Oh, how strange. What origins are you interested in?
I think mythic, because again, the
Mhm.
nature of the character. Again, not Asgardian though, because
Right.
he's not an Asgardian. And special training. Special training I can select. I just can't select the others.
Okay, select special training, and we'll go back in and edit and add mythic to it a little bit later, and I'll see if I can't figure out what the problem is with you guys accessing all of this information. So with mythic, as we said, your tags are supernatural. With special training, you automatically get the trait determination, and that should self-populate. And we'll get to traits here in a little bit. And the limitation for special training for anybody at home is unless the character has another origin, which Roger does, they cannot choose powers that grant them superhuman abilities. So there are asterisks when you look at the powers. Some of them can be selected by normal humans. Some of them cannot be. But since Roger's character has both the mythic and special training, he will not be restricted by that. Dan M.
I'm going to go with weird science. Weird science, not just because I'm weird.
Just weird.
Just weird.
I like it.
Weird scientist. Weird science, even.
So with weird science, we've already talked a little bit about the examples. The only addition to that is you automatically get the trait weird. Weird.
So what's new?
And then, so after we've got our background selected, that's when you move into occupations. Now, occupations, this is basically, it could be your day job. It could be how your character operates. Like it could be an adventurer. Like your whole job, your whole occupation, everything is wound up in being a superhero. So, like Taskmaster might be an adventurer. Iron Fist might be an adventurer. Any of these guys might be adventurers. In addition, you have Assassin. Pretty straightforward. Now we're thinking Elektra. We're thinking the Punisher might fall under Assassin. Deadpool. And there's several characters you could easily see falling into Assassin. Criminal is just straight up criminal. Dr. Octopus, the Vulture, any number. Educator. So your primary job is teaching. Now this might be as your secret identity, you're a teacher. It could also be that you help teach other superheroes. Your Professor Xavier would fall easily into the educator. Engineer, yeah, you're a builder, either in your day job or Iron Man could easily fall up under engineer. Entertainer, you make a living making people laugh and cry and all that kind of good stuff. In Marvel Comics, you could look at Wonder Man is a good example of a superhero that's an entertainer. Healthcare worker, doctor, nurse, social worker, obviously a whole slew of them fall up under that. Doctor Strange originally, the night nurse as her occupation and her pseudo superhero identity. Investigator, that's what you do. Like you're a private investigator, or perhaps even a police investigator. So your Jessica Joneses, perhaps. Journalist, this is an easy one. Your Peter Parkers, etc. Law enforcement. If you didn't go the investigator route, you wanted to go straight law enforcement, that could be your occupation. Lawyer, your Matt Murdochs, your She-Hulks. A leader, either as like a civic leader, like you're on the city council, you're a mayor, you're the king of Latveria, or you're the king of Atlantis. I mean, these are leaders. You could also potentially be like a military leader, which leads us into military. You're a soldier. You were a soldier. You continue to be a soldier. Outsider. Once again, this is one that often comes up from some backgrounds. You come from another time, another planet, another dimension. So you don't necessarily fit into the norm of this world, at least initially. Scientists, your Ant-Man, your original, your Hank Pyms. Spy, this could easily be Black Widow. Student, you're a student, could be any of the New Mutants. They're students at Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters. Tycoon, you're just silly rich. This could easily be, your Tony Starks, your Kingpins. All of these guys can fall up under tycoons. So does anyone have an occupation, or should I say, Dan, what occupation did you select for your melee-based mythic hero?
Unsurprisingly, military. But
Fantastic.
ye olde military, not current modern day military.
All right. So with your military occupation, when you look at occupations, they will give you character examples, and then they'll give you certain traits that you automatically get as having been a member of that occupation. So the traits for military are battle ready, which gives you a bonus to focus, connections, which give you connections to the military. In other words, you could call up a buddy who's in the military and help you, like Iron Man does in the MCU when he calls Rhodey and says, hey, by the way, please have these fighters stop shooting at me. Military connection. And you get situational awareness, which helps you when you're dealing with vigilance checks and initiative. Stu, how about your alien female genius?
Genius, yeah. Well, interestingly, it's military again, but the choices were slightly different in that what it was it's both when she was working for the Krylorian Space Navy, so she's a psychic navigator. All the Krylorian ships are navigated and run with psychic, apparently. Something I read in the canon. So I thought that was a good fit for her. So she's basically a navigator. It also fits with the name. The name comes from this as well, when we'll see later. So there was partly military, but also when she fell to earth, her adopted Bedouin tribe eventually fought against the Turks in World War One, and she joined the British military under Lawrence of Arabia's flag, which we've talked about already, that could have very well been Lance. So hence there being a bit of a connection there. So she's sort of like, she's military and she's still military now, particularly. But
I like it.
Sort of, on the edges of military, if you like, almost sort of paramilitary.
Fantastic. Roger,
so
have you thought of an occupation?
Thinking between military and spy, because it's kind of, they overlap what I was going for. But
you could pick either, and later when we get into traits, you can pick a trait that is additional occupation. So you could use one of your traits that you can select to pick up the other occupation and then get the benefits for both if you'd like.
So what does spy do? Because I can't, again, unfortunately, I don't have that as an option.
No worries. So with spy, it gives you the tags black market access, and that's just, so tags don't really have a mechanical effect so much as a role-playing effect. In other words, let's say you were in a city somewhere and you were like, hey, we need to get some high explosives and we don't have access to them. You would then be able to say, well, I've got black market access. And then I would say, okay, well, then you know somebody here and you can go and you can get the explosives. That's how that would work. In addition, the spies automatically have traits, connections, espionage, and leverage. So connections, espionage, kind of the same thing I was talking about with connections military. You're in a situation and you're like, hey, I know a counterintelligence agent who lives or who works in this theater. I can contact them and get the frequency for this guy's villa that we want to tap into his communication. You could use that to get that. Now, leverage, bear with me, I'm going to look it up. Leverage, the character is good at figuring out what people want and using it against them. They have an edge on logic checks to investigate people and on ego checks to persuade people they've investigated. So with your 0 logic and 0 ego, it's not necessarily going to help you a lot.
Too, I think.
Oh, ego too. So it's still, but anytime you get an edge, remember, you get to re-roll the lowest dice and take the better of the two. So that definitely helps you in situations where leveraging someone might come into play.
Okay. Well, I think I'll I'll select military for now because I can't select spy because it's not
I don't know why that's happening, but I will definitely look into it because they all show on mine, obviously, because I'm reading them off. But
But
something hanky is going on, and I'll have to dive into
I
that
might
on
try and add
Roll20.
spy as well later on.
Okay, you should.
Aaron, if I had to venture a guess, I'm guessing you've paid for the stuff,
Yep,
and we
that
haven't.
might be it. Yeah,
I think
but
that's what
I've
it
invited
is.
you to my game, but you should have. So I thought you should have access to it.
I had
But
the similar problem with a Dungeon and Dragon game recently,
Okay,
where the
okay.
GM had all the stuff and we just couldn't access it.
So mildly irritating, but once we get through character creation, I'll go back and fix everybody up. I'm not saying this is why I typically use Foundry instead of Roll20, but we'll roll with it there. Okay. Dan M.
Science.
Science. I love it. So as a scientist, you get the tags lab access. So as we're working and you know, in gameplay, if you say, hey, you know what, I want to go to a lab or my lab, it wouldn't necessarily just have to be your lab. Like if we're someplace else, you have the ability to work with other scientists to get access to their labs for things that you need. And you get the traits, the traits inventor and scientific expertise. Inventor, the character is good at coming up with solutions on the fly. They have an edge on logic checks when creating or repairing things. So if you want to MacGyver something in the middle of an adventure and go, I pull out of my utility belt a staple and a piece of gum and a pencil, and I make a rudimentary lathe, I will say, make that roll. Let's see how it goes. You know, well, I guess what I'm saying is I really, guys, want you to know that your traits and tags, they have an effect in the game. So don't forget about them. You know, feel free to leverage them and feel free to ask me, can I do this? And I'm a yeah, sure, for the most part kind of guy. So we'll see how far down the rabbit hole we can get. With scientific expertise, the character has extensive scientific training. They have an edge on logic checks when dealing with scientific research. If they have access to the appropriate lab at the time, they gain a second edge on such checks. So if you're doing an investigation into some kind of lab work and you find the right kind of lab to do that, you would get 2 edges. Now, a double edge, as I said earlier, that would allow you to re-roll your 2 lowest dice and take the better. That could be if you rolled a 1 on one die and you re-rolled it and you rolled a 1 again on that same dice, you can re-roll that same dice the second time, or you can pick 2 different dice. So we've got a weird scientist, a very smart weird scientist. We've got a very smart alien navigator with a military background. We've got a very, very melee-oriented soldier, and we have a very adapted spy and ranged combatant thus far. So next we move on to, from occupations, is traits. Now, trait is a label in the game that does have some mechanical association with it. Some of them are minor powers or abilities, while others just represent skills. A lot of traits are available to anyone. Some are restricted based on your origin. So you acquire traits in 3 main ways: as part of your origin, which we've already gone over, as part of your education, which we've already gone over, and as an extra trait. So you guys are rank 2. So in addition to every trait that you were given from your occupation and your origin, if you got any, or however many you got, you can now select 2 additional traits to add to your character. And there is a laundry list of them. But since you guys may not have access to all of them, I will go over them for you. Abrasive. You know how to rub people the wrong way. You give trouble to them when they make ego checks to persuade someone. So, you know, I mean, that's
most of the people in this group.
Yeah, exactly. Anybody, you all are naturally abrasive, and I applaud you for that. There is anathema, so you take additional damage from something. Remember earlier when I talked about Venom having anathema sonic and heat? Now, you know, this is, once again, these are flavor opportunities for you for, you know, giving your character some sort of weakness that you can play off of. I will tell you, good role playing and playing off things like that does have the ability to earn you extra karma. And in this game, karma is a currency that you can spend to give yourself an edge, to give the enemy trouble, to heal, either focus or health during combat. So karma is important, and we'll get to that a little bit more in a moment. Next is audience. There's a lot of people who follow your work and like you, like Wonder Man would have an audience. Any of the heroes that are out there, like Iron Man, they may have audience as a trait. And mechanically, what that does is by making an ego check, the character can persuade their audience to provide help in the form of information or resources. Battle ready, we already talked a little bit about. That gives you plus 30 to your focus. Beguiling, the character has an edge when making ego checks to persuade someone who could be attracted to them. Berserker, we're talking Wolverine territory here, the Hulk, a lot of gamma mutates. Being Berserk gives the character an edge on all close attacks and adds +2 to their melee, resilience, and ego defenses. However, it removes 2 from their agility defense, and they cannot use ranged weapons. In other words, you're vulnerable to getting shot, but you are a powerhouse if you're up close and personal. Big. The character is big in size. They get -1 to their melee and agility defenses, and +1 to their run speed, and increases their reach to 2. So this is just characters who are taller than normal. And this is not the superpower to grow large. This is just your big. Like Doc Samson, I think, is like 8 feet tall. The Hulk varies from anywhere to 10 feet. Groot is enormous. So all of those people could have big. Breathe differently. You're not able to breathe air. So this was like Atlanteans. You have to have some sort of apparatus to breathe when you're on the surface. Clinistician, you gain an edge on logic checks to determine what is medically wrong with someone. So, this goes hand in hand if you're a physician of some sort. Clueless, the character tends to shut out things that are not entirely focused on. They have trouble on any vigilance checks to spot hidden or invisible things. Enemies have an edge on agility checks to sneak past them. Combat expert, you know how to handle themselves better than most. You get an edge on melee attacks against rank 1 characters. So against your average soldier, you would get an edge on fighting them. Combat reflexes, you can react quickly in combat. This gives you an additional reaction every turn. So when you get into combat, you have the similar kind of phasing that you get used to in a lot of other games. You get a move action, you get a standard action, you get a reaction. And typically you only have 1 reaction. But this particular ability gives you a second reaction that you can use. And when we look at powers, a lot of powers trigger off of different phases in combat. You may have powers that trigger off your reaction. So if you had 2 reactions, you could hold a reaction for a normal sort of reactive ability, and then you could also activate a reactive power. So connections, we already talked about. Deal maker, you're a master of the art of negotiation. Determination, you never give up. While demoralized, you do not gain trouble on all actions. So demoralized is when you're out of focus, or you've taken enough ego damage that your focus is 0. When you're demoralized, you normally gain trouble on all actions. Determination allows you not to do that. Eidetic memory, this is great for players who forget things or don't like to take notes, because your character remembers everything, and you can ask the GM, hey, what the hell happened there? Or in this game, the narrator. Enduring Constitution, you can function for up to 48 hours without sleep and have an edge on resilience checks to overcome fatigue and weariness. Enhanced Physique, you are stronger than regular humans. You treat your character as 1 size bigger for lifting, carrying, swinging, and throwing things. Extra Occupation, which we already talked about. Extraordinary Origin, you get a second origin. Now, I'm going to grant you your multiple origins. If you've got multiple origins, I'm just going to give them to you. I'm not going to make you burn a trait on that. Famous, it is kind of what it is. You're well known. You get edge on ego checks to persuade someone who thinks favorably of you. Fearless, you're extremely brave. You've got an edge check on anything that would induce fear. First aid, you know how to apply first aid. You get an edge on logic check to stop the bleeding condition. You're a font of information. You get an edge on logic checks having to do with knowledge. Free running, you have an edge on agility checks made to perform acrobatic actions during movement. So this is like your Spider-Man, your Deadpool, any of these super agile guys. Fresh eyes, you have your own way of doing things. You have an edge on logic checks when faced with something for the first time. So if it's a situation you've never dealt with and you've got fresh eyes, you would have an edge on logic check to figure out what the heck is going on. Gearhead, you have an edge on logic checks to figure out how machines work. Glibness, you got the gift of the gab. Your Jim, you have the edge on ego checks to persuade characters when they're speaking for the first time. God heritage, this is restricted to people with the origin of either Olympian or Asgardian, etc. Gullible, you're easy to fool. People have an edge on ego checks to lie to you. Honest, you are honest, and you have an edge on ego checks to persuade people who are already friendly to you. Interrogation, you know how to interrogate. Inventor, you get an edge on logic checks when creating or repairing things, which Diane's character already has. Investigation, you get a logic check on interpreting clues, and you get an edge on vigilance checks to spot them. Iron Will, enemies have trouble mentally attacking you with ego, and so you get an edge on breaking free of mind control or other compulsions. Legal, you're a lawyer. Leverage, we've talked about. Loner, character does not play well with others. They cannot give an edge via assistance to someone who's not their teammate. Monster, this falls back to an origin. Out of shape, you're physically out of shape. Think the Blob. Piloting, which Stu's character has, you have an edge on agility checks when piloting or driving vehicles. Presence, you've got a presence, and you get an edge on ego checks that to get people to pay attention to you. Public speaking, you have an edge on ego checks when attempting to persuade groups of people. Pundit, a good arguer. Quick learner, if you fail an action check, you gain an edge on the next time you try to do the exact same action if you try to do it on the next turn. Scientific expertise, we already talked about. Signature attack, the character is known for favoring a particular kind of weapon or attack power. They have an edge when making an attack using this signature attack. Situational awareness, we talked about. Character is trained and always keeps an eye out for trouble. They have an edge on initiative checks. Skeptical, you're hard to fool. Small, you're smaller than average. Think Puck from Alpha Flight. You get +1 on melee and agility defenses and take -1 from your run speed. Sneaky, the character has an edge on agility checks when sneaking around. Enemies have trouble on vigilance checks to detect the character when they are invisible or hiding or sneaking. Stranger, character doesn't understand local customs. Surprising power. The character can choose a power they normally would not have the ability to use. The character will still need to have any prerequisites for the power, but they can ignore rank and origin requirements. This trait can be selected multiple times. So this is a situation, let's say, where you've got a rank 2 character, but you want to make them almost completely invulnerable from harm. So you want to take Sturdy 4 instead of Sturdy 2. Now, you still have to buy Sturdy 1, Sturdy 2, and Sturdy 3, and Sturdy 4, so you still have to spend 4 power points to get it, but you can ignore the rank requirement or origin requirement for it. Tech reliance, you're reliant on technology. Mechanically, when you take damage that would render you unconscious, you can instead choose to lose all of your technological-related powers and remain conscious with 1 point of health. This is Iron Man getting ready to go down, and he blows off his Iron Man suit and rolls out as Tony Stark kind of situation, but stays conscious. Weakness, you suffer from an unusual amount of harm from a certain substance. This is like a vampire and sunlight, etc. Or weird, you have something weird or wonderful about them that causes people to have a strong reaction to you, either good or bad. You have an edge on all ego checks to persuade people inclined to like you, and trouble on all ego checks against people who might dislike you. So I know that was a lot of traits. Each of you get to pick 2 in addition to what you were given from your origin and occupation. And like I said, between this week and next week, you can change your mind. But we'll go and start with Dan P. Are you sticking with the ones you picked? Did you pick any?
Yes, I did indeed. I have Iron Will, and it falls into his part of his background. So he obviously has edge on ego checks. The enemy have trouble on ego checks to try to control his mind or influence his actions, and then he has an edge to break free of any mind control or other compulsions. And then I went with signature attack with his blade, his sword. That's what he uses. He's always used it, and therefore I thought it was sort of fitting that would be his other trait.
I like it. And Stu, how about your female alien navigator?
Yeah, so I went with piloting, because obviously she's a navigator on a starship, so she understands. You'll see as well when you see the power picks how it sort of goes with those as well. But the whole point is that she understands vehicles, how to get from one place to another inside a tin can, basically. Obviously, she got situational awareness, battle ready, and military connections from military background. And then I picked Iron Will as well, but mainly because if she's psychic,
makes sense.
It kind of fits again with the powers that she's got, and that sort of like, that's where that came from. Yeah,
I like it. Roger, do you have an idea what two traits you'd like to pick?
Yes, but I can only pick one of them because it's not appearing for me on the other one. I've gone with signature weapon for my longbow, and sneaky is the one I'd like to have but can't select.
Okay. And so after we're done on the stream, anything you can't put in for your characters, shoot me the information and I'll get it fixed before next week. Even if I have to go in and rebuild your whole character from scratch, because that's the kind of dedicated narrator I am.
You can also write them in manually. So
there is that too.
So
you're not supposed to tell my secrets. I was looking for some, It's all right.
Sorry.
It's all right, Dan. You're crushing my soul now. All right, Dan M. How about you?
I have picked the following additional traits: quick learner and gearhead.
Fantastic. Fits perfect from what you've been describing so far. Then we go into tags. They don't really go into tags into character description too much here. But I just want to bring it up. Now, you can basically have as many tags in this game as you want. They don't really have a lot of direct mechanical impact. But like I said, your tags help flesh out who your character was, who they are, and how they can interact through role play with what we're going to be doing. So feel free to go for it. Like alien heritage, no. This is before. This is. They don't really have this in the character creation for Roll20, but this is something. This would, if you're using the book at home, this would be the next thing you'd look at is tags. Now you get some tags potentially from your origin or your occupation, but if there are other tags that you think your character would have based on who they are for you in your head as you design them, you can apply them. And there are things like alien heritage, which Stu obviously has, but like alternate form as well. So you're changing form, but it doesn't necessarily give you any mechanical benefit. So this is Bruce Banner to the Hulk. We're really only writing up the Hulk when we write up his character, right? But he also is Bruce Banner. So he's got this alternate form. When you look at the vampire write-up in the game, the bad guys, they have alternate form bat, alternate form wolf, alternate form mist. Now, there could be an argument made that they should have the shapeshifter power instead, but they're basically saying in these alternate forms, they are weaker than they would be in their heroic form, so that you don't really need to apply a lot of mechanical information to it. Amphibious, if you're an Atlantean, you automatically get this. If you've got a problem hearing, if you've got authority, like if you're playing an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., like I was saying, all of you guys are superheroes who work for S.H.I.E.L.D., I would say all of you have the authority tag because you would literally be badge-carrying S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. Black market access, something that Roger's character has. dependents. If you want to have Aunt May or Mary Jane waiting at home for you, those are hooks that the narrator and the character can use to make the story more dynamic and interesting. That's kind of what tags are. So if you actually look here in Roll20, you should have access to the core rule book. And if you don't, I'll get you access to it. So between this week and next week, read through all the tags. And if there are ones you want, just let me know. And as long as they make sense, we will add them in. This takes us to the next actual area of character creation in Roll20, and that's powers. So at rank 2, you all get 5 powers. And if you go to add a power, it'll pull up all the possible power sets. And then if you go into the different power sets, it gives you additional power options. Now, for everybody at home,
Aaron,
yes.
the rulebook says 8 powers at rank 2.
Sorry, it is 8, yes. I don't know why it's saying 5 right here now, but yes,
I've
it
got
is 8.
Point Bank 10.
Right. That's because you get extra because you haven't picked from any. So basically, if you pick basic powers and just basic powers, you get 2 extras. If you pick basic powers and plus one other category, you get +1 power. And if you pick 2 extra categories, you don't get any extra powers. So you basically get extra powers for picking from less categories.
Exactly. So each rank, so you get your base rank power plus an additional power point for every rank, unless you use a lot of different power sets. In other words, if you are, if you're the Incredible Hulk, all you're using are super strength powers and basic powers. So at rank 2, you would have 9 power points to use from. So it'll self-deduct depending on which power sets. You don't really need to worry about the total up there at the top. I don't know why mine just says 5. You're right, it is 8, rank 2. But as Dan perfectly pointed out, basic powers don't count against that total cap, but other power sets do. So you've got in power sets, you've got the basic powers, and I'll go through. Those are like your mighty, your sturdy, like your invulnerability, your accuracy, your the fact that if you're better with a ranged weapon, you might take the accuracy powers to improve the amount of damage you could do. Those are basic powers. Your heightened senses, your energy absorption, your brawling ability, which allows you to assign your melee defense to your agility defense. So they're all different abilities, but they consider them very basic. Your actual power sets are elemental control, and that's any element. So that's Electro controlling electricity. That's Sandman controlling sand. That's Magneto controlling electromagnetism. Any kind of energy or elemental control might fall up under elemental control. There's illusion. This is actually making illusions, either psionically, magically. It doesn't really go into how it is you make illusions, but you have abilities to create auditory, visual illusions. It also gives you this is where you also would pick up invisibility if you wanted to be able to become invisible. Or if you wanted to be like Dazzler and the ability to generate lights, this would also fall up under illusions. Magic, these are all your basic magic powers. This is your Doctor Strange stuff. You've got magic chaos, which is like the Scarlet Witch, the ability to manipulate probability. You've got demonic magic. This is like your Ghost Rider stuff, Hellfire chains and penance stairs and possessing vehicles. You've got magic sorcery. This is your bread and butter Doctor Strange, Crimson Bands of Cider Rock, Bolts of Balthak. I mean, all of the stuff you hear Doctor Strange back in the Steve Ditko days scream out in the comics. This is his set. You've got martial arts. This is anybody who's trained the martial arts. This is Iron Fist, Shang-Chi, a lot of other characters. Colossus is good at judo. Captain America, anybody who has martial skills that go beyond basic brawling, you might dip into martial arts power sets. Melee weapons. This is your Eldritch Knight. or the Black Knight, or potentially Wolverine with his claws, Deadpool with his sword. All of these fall into this. Then you've got omniversal travel. You've got your dimensional teleporters. You've got your multiversal teleportals like America Chavez. You've got your time travelers like Kang. Then you've got plasticity. This is being stretchy. This is Mr. Fantastic from the Fantastic Four. It's also Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy. Powers fall into this. Phasing. This is the ability to move through matter. You know, your vision, reducing his density. Your Kitty Pryde or Shadow Cat, whatever she wants to call herself these days on the X-Men. You've got power control. This is the ability to boost or dampen other people's powers or copy their powers or abilities. So Taskmaster with his photographic reflexes, Rogue from the X-Men with her ability to drain others' powers. Ranged weapons. So this is anybody's ability to shoot something, shoot a gun, shoot a bow, whatever they're shooting. You might fall into ranged weapons. Resize. This is growing and shrinking. They do have a power set for Shield Bearer. This is your Captain America and your Taskmaster. Some other Captain America clones out there, U.S. Agent. Spider powers. These are your web casting, your web gliding, your spider senses. This is Spider-Gwen, Spider-Man, Miles Morales, and a few others. You can dip into spider powers to get spider-like abilities. Super speed. This is your Quicksilver, your super fast running, your blurring, all of that kind of stuff. Super strength. This is your straight up the Thing, the Hulk, Power Man, anybody who's screaming things like it's clobbering time. The Juggernaut, his immovability. Tactics. This is the soldier. This is battlefield awareness and manipulation. This is Captain America calling out and going, hit here, or fall back. This is somebody who's the tactician coordinating things on the battlefield. Telekinesis. This is moving matter and manipulating matter with your mind. Kid Omega, the Phoenix, or in her lesser powerful state, Jean Grey. A lot of telekinetics out there in the Marvel Universe. Telepathy. This is meeting people's minds, controlling their minds, etc. Professor Xavier, Emma Frost, Psylocke, whole number of telepaths out there as well. Teleportation. This is the ability to move from one place to another without physically moving through the intervening space. Think Nightcrawler, Magic, anybody who blinks around the battlefield. Weather control, the ability to manipulate and control weather. This is Storm or Thor. And then, like I said, the basic powers. So that's a lot to take in. You have anywhere between 8 and 10 powers to spend at rank 2. I'm going to start with Stu this time and have him go through his power selection for his alien.
I think I might have. So did he say if you basic doesn't count as a group?
Right. It does not count against your total powers when you select basic powers. So you have it counts against your power points, but
yes,
so the way it works is rank 2. Go ahead.
Sorry.
I was just going to say for everybody out there, rank 2, as Dan said, technically have 10 potential powers, and if you only select powers from basic, you could have 10 powers. If you select powers from basic and 1 power set, your maximum total is 9. If you select powers from basic and 2 power sets, your maximum is 8.
Okay. No, I've done it right then. That's all right. I thought I'd done it wrong, but we're good. So basically, I've taken powers from telepathy, telekinesis, and then there's a couple of basic ones thrown in that fit with the character. So the first one I've gone for was Cloak, which is a telepathy, terribly pronounced, but a telepathy power where I reach out to other people's minds and blank me from their minds effectively as I walk through. Telepathic link, so I can talk to people without using my voice. And those that are willing, and obviously those that aren't willing, depending on who it is that we're trying to form the link with. I've taken machine empathy, because that fits with the whole astropath kind of pilot and psychic control of spaceships. So that's where that came from. And then we've gone with telekinesis, so telekinetic manipulation, which is the first power you have to select before you can really select most of the other telekinetic powers. And with the telekinetic side, we've got manipulation. I've got telekinetic attack, which is a straightforward force blast, I think, from sort of pushing people about effectively. And then levitation, so self-lifting. With those all sort of, I thought that was a reasonable mix, and it made sense with the character as well.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
And Stu brings up a good point when he's discussing powers for everybody watching at home. Within your power sets, there are powers that are locked behind other prerequisites. So powers build on one another. And that's why as you go through the ranks, you can become more and more powerful. You can go from a basic telekinetic who's moving pencils around to ones that are, cracking moons in half, in theory.
Pushing battleships about.
Exactly. So all of them, so I've often recommended to players since this came out not that long ago, if you're looking to I'm eventually going to be a rank 6, you go, well, what do I want my capstone ability to look like? And then work backwards from there through the powers, so you make sure you don't miss a key prerequisite somewhere in there that is going to make you have to redo your whole character when you get to the appropriate rank. So thank you, Stu. Dan.
Two last ones as well.
Oh, yep. Go ahead.
Quite
Sorry.
Useful from the basic. One was integrity, which I believe basically means that when somebody performs an ego attack on me, it actually goes against my logic defense instead, which is very useful for a psychic with a very high logic score. And then again, it also fits with the iron will idea that my mind is it's a fortress, basically. It's a fortress mind. And the last but not least was brilliance. Obviously, bright as a button.
And brilliance gives you combat multipliers and skill multipliers when using logic.
Yeah.
And so that's an important thing about a lot of the basic skills is they modify your stats in some ways. Some of them do. Like what Stu was saying about integrity is really important. So in combat situations, you can either be attacked in melee, attacked at distance using agility defense, attacked using an ego-based attack, that is affecting your mental strength, so to speak, or attacked using a logic-based attack. So you have defense scores for every one of those. So what Stu is basically saying is, I didn't have to invest anything in ego because I'm going to be able to use my logic score, which is very high, to defend against ego attacks as well. So it's a way to help manipulate your Marvel stats without having to overinflate all of them. So it's really good to take a look at those basic powers. Dan P, let's talk about your melee guy.
Well, I only have picked from two, and that is melee and basic, unsurprisingly. So we'll start with what I went with in melee. So melee, first of all, gives me a weapon. So I pick sword because I am a knight. And then from my powers in there, I've gone for fast attacks and riposte. So riposte is a reaction. So if someone fails to hit me in combat, I can react and immediately hit them. And it doesn't cost me any focus on which is good. It's just a straight up reaction. And then I have fast attacks, which allows me to basically attack two targets, and I'll split the damage between. They basically suffer half damage each, unless I roll a fantastic result, in which case they suffer full damage. I then have sturdy 1 and 2. And this plays off the fact that my character has essentially magical armor that appears when he's in danger. So this applies a damage reduction modifier of 2. So it's not reducing their damage by 2, it's reducing their modifier by 2. And if it reduces their modifier to 0, they can't damage me. So I've gone for combat trickery. which is a 5 focus ability, and once per battle, so once per time with the combat situation that we're in, I can immediately change my Marvel dice to a Marvel. So it just gives me a free Marvel dice. I have chosen Brawling for similar reasons that Stu chose Integrity. I chose Brawling because it means that my melee defense is also my agility defense. So against ranged attacks and so on and so forth. And I kind of figured, like, so obviously I assume we're going to talk about character backgrounds, but he's been around for a long time, and he's been in multiple combats with swords. So he's kind of learned how to position himself and maybe use his sword to sort of protect himself from ranged attacks. He's got healing factor. So part of his background, and again we'll get to it when we do full backgrounds, but he heals throughout combat, and obviously outside of combat heals as well. So that gives him he heals basically every turn. He heals his resilience score in hit points. So he'll heal resilience of 4, so he'll be picking up 4 hit points each time. And then finally, because while he is combat orientated and his stats are combat orientated, I didn't want him to be a dullard that couldn't be involved overall. And like I said, he's been around for over 1,000 years at this point. So I have a brilliance 1 and discipline 1, which gives me basically a non-combat ego score of 1 and a non-combat logic score of 1, which also then increases my defense on those side of things as well. So I can't use it for logic attacks and logic and ego attacks, but for defense and for non-combat situations, I have an ego score of 1. So it just makes him seem maybe not as dull, and maybe get him a bit more involved in the talking and side of things as well.
Yeah, I like those choices. When I saw those, I was like, oh, that's thinking. That was very clever. So we know Stu's and we know Dan P's, Roger and Dan M. Now, guys, obviously Stu and Dan made their characters in advance and had some time to mull over it. So I'm not going to hold you to anything. And in fact, if you don't want to do your full power selections today, you don't have to. But give us an idea. If you don't know what powers for sure you're going, give us an idea of the kind of powers you're looking to select between now and next week.
So I've picked some, but I don't know. Oh, okay. So the ones I've picked so far are Accuracy 1 and 2, because he's very good with the bow. Slow Motion Dodge, he's very, very quick and good at getting out of the way of things. Combat Trickery. Again, he's pretty good at, when someone's looking the other way, putting a shot through the back like a hero. And I went with Sniping from the ranged weapons set as well. Good at pulling off that kind of long range shot that, well, kind of makes, splitting the arrow almost, even though that's almost physically impossible, but somehow I can pull it off.
You're a master of your craft.
That's what I've got so far, but there are a bajillion powers that I'm just very slowly scrolling through.
Yeah, and like I said, you don't feel locked into anything until we start playing next week. So I just wanted to get a flavor, because I got an idea what your background, what your character concept is, and we're going to introduce those in a minute. Dan M, what do you think?
Well, I would definitely like to go for the omniversal power time.
Nice.
And I'm just trying to get my head around it, because the first one, is that right, costs 3?
No, so like omniversal power for time, that's the rank at which you can select it. So technically you can't select any of those powers yet. However, however, you can flavor other things like time and manipulation. And what I was thinking of for you when you were telling me about this is super speed. As opposed to the idea of you moving fast, it would be more like the idea of you being able to suspend yourself from the flow of time and do things. So that might be something to think about, like Blazing Fists and Blur and things like that. You can, I know they go under the super speed power set, but if anybody watches us on the Lollygaggers, like I made a teleporter, but I pulled a whole bunch of spider powers into mine. And I flavored his like web casting and spider senses as combat precognition and the ability to freeze space-time. So just because it falls under a power set, it doesn't mean you have to flavor the power that way. If it mechanically works for your idea as well, we'll call it whatever you want. So like if you wanted to say, well, take the power blur so that I'm harder to hit, it's not that you are moving at super speed. It's maybe that you're pulling yourself out of phase and time, and it's making people harder to hit you. So don't feel isolated into the time travel thing, because you can get there at rank 3. And like I said to everybody at home, we're going to get to rank 6 before we're all said and done, unless Pete kicks me off the channel. So, don't feel like you're isolated. You could also use elemental control. Time, you could say you manipulate tachyons, and any one of the elemental control powers you could use as part of temporal manipulation as well. So if you're thinking about time manipulation, take the whole week, think about what you want to do. We can chat about it, and then we can come up with a final power set for you.
Okay, I'll go away and have a think.
So as
a question, evasion.
Mhm.
So it says the character can use their agility defense score against melee attacks.
Mhm.
What are the defense scores? Because I haven't got a clue.
Fantastic. So that's actually a very good point. So I'll explain that right now. So when you look at your character sheet, when it comes down to combat situations, everything kind of procs off of your skills. So if you've got, let's say, a agility score of 4, then your agility defense, your flat agility defense would be 14. So it's 10 plus your score. And that's what somebody attacking you would have to roll better than on 3d6 plus their skill to hit. So let's say you have evasion. Let's say you've got a 0 in melee. So your melee defense is 10, but you've got a 5 in agility, which makes your agility defense 15. You're like, well, I'm going to take evasion, and that makes your melee defense 15 as well.
Gotcha. Okay.
And it also affects your combat, your combat multipliers go in there too. So when you're doing damage, the way damage works for everybody out at home, you take the die roll on your Marvel die, you multiply that times your combat multiplier, which the base is just your rank. So your base multiplier for all of these characters would be 2. And then you add your stat in. So let's say you had an agility of 5 and you're rank 2 and you shoot at somebody, your combat damage would be your whatever you rolled on your Marvel dice times 2 plus 5. But that can be manipulated through different basic powers. Like accuracy, which Roger's character took. Accuracy 2 increases your multiplier by 2. So that means Roger's combat multiplier for damage would be his Marvel dice times 4 plus his agility. And then Dan P's character took sturdy, which reduces people's combat multipliers. This is why I said occasionally combat can get a little complicated. So let's say he was getting shot by that same guy who had a combat multiplier of 4. Well, Dan has reduced it to a combat multiplier of 2. So, but we will do a deep and slow dive into combat next week, because spoiler alert, there's going to be a fight next week. And we'll get into the nuts and bolts of that. So Roll20, when it's fully functioning, does a pretty good job of doing most of those calculations for you. So I'll be going back and double checking everybody's character sheet and make sure everything's set up right.
Where is evasion on there? Because although I found it in the book, but I can't find it on the
basic power set. If you don't see it in there, like I said, just drop me a note and I'll make sure it gets added to.
I'll add it to the list.
Yep. Just add it to the list. It should be like, if you're looking at power, at the power sets, if you look in the basic power, it should be on that list. If it is not, I will take care of adding it in for you.
Cool. Also, for other Dan, it's worth mentioning, if you want to go back to your traits, if you did want to take the Omniverse power, there's that trait that allows you to take a power not from your rank.
That's absolutely right. The surprising power trait, you could take that, and then you could pull up, as long as you're willing to spend the power points on any of the omniversal time travel powers you could. So like you could definitely go straight into timeout or time bubble, as long as you had the prerequisites. You still have to buy the prerequisite as well. And like instant replay is the prerequisite for most of this. Instant replay or time travel are the basic ones for Omniverse's time travel. So you'd have to spend 3 power points of your anywhere between 8, 9, and 10. But as long as you have the surprising power trait, you could dive right into it. Good catch, Dan. Thank you.
Oh, that's cool.
So definitely we can work through all of that between now and next week. If you're in Roll20 and you're working through character creation, your next step before you finish is your backstory. Now, this is also where you would add any tags in that you wanted to add. Two of our players already have characters with backstories, so we're going to introduce what it sounds like today. I'm going to have Dan and Stu introduce their characters to us for the first time, and then next week we will meet Roger, Dan M, and Jim's characters as we jump into the fiction. So, Dan, take it away. Who are you playing?
Today and for forevermore in the Marvel Universe, I shall be playing codename the Eldritch Knight, who is, in fact, the Knight Lancelot of Age and Legend. He goes by Lance Claymore in this timeline. However, he's been around for well over 1,000 years at this point, considering that the Legends of Arthur are around 680 AD. And what a lot of people don't know is that he was actually added to the Arthurian legend later on. He actually didn't exist at the time of Arthur. He was about 70 years later. And in his time when he was first a noble knight, the lands were threatened by magic and monsters, and he set out to find the legendary items of Arthur to try and help protect the lands and so on and so forth, after all being a noble knight. He finally found the amulet Pendragon after feverish research and looking through legendary texts and whatnot. And when he came upon it, he obviously took it because he thought, I need this to defend the lands. What he didn't realize is that the amulet Pendragon actually was the prison of the evil sorceress Morgan Le Fay. And he had an epic battle with her, which he was clearly very losing because he couldn't take on a dark sorceress. He was just a human knight. As he was about to die and she was about to land the killing blow, the amulet suddenly appeared in the air before him and stopped the blow, and then inserted itself, burning deep into his chest, and it now stands just above his heart. You can see the amulet, it's there, but it is also embedded in his skin and sits on his rib cage just above his heart, and it basically immediately covered him in a almost dragon scale like armor with plates, and it was magical, made him very resistant to damage, and he managed to fight her back, and before he could land a killing blow on her, she uttered a curse, and that curse was, never shall you know peace, cursed to walk the earth for all eternity, a burden borne for all life. For should you fall and the amulet break, I will be free once more. And she magically inserted herself into the amulet, and that's actually what's given him his long life, because the curse basically means he has to continue to protect this amulet. It's tied to his life. If he ever dies, the amulet breaks, and Morgan Le Fay, the dark sorceress, will break free. So while he's not truly immortal in the normal sense of immortality, he is immune to natural causes of death. And actually that kind of then starts to fit into some of his tags I've given him. So you can choose immunity as a tag, and I've given him immunity, death, natural causes. So he doesn't age, he doesn't suffer from diseases or natural poisons. It's worth pointing out though that if something's magical, it would affect him. So if someone did a magical illness or a magical poison on him, it would affect him. And then some of his other sort of tags I've given him, I've given him linguist, because he's lived in and around Europe for well over 1,000 years at this point. He can speak most European languages, including Latin. And he also has a basic understanding of Middle East and Asian languages as well. I've given him cursed, so he is obviously cursed. So he has this, he has to protect this amulet. And sometimes that actually is a flaw as well, in that his first duty is to protect the amulet. And if he ever thinks that he's near death, he will potentially leave others to die in his stead, because actually his first priority is to keep Morgan Le Fay bound within the item. He is mysterious because he doesn't know where all of the powers come from. Some of them come from the amulet, some of them come from her as a curse. he is rich, not Tony Stark rich, because I wanted well off, not rich. I didn't want him to be like supersonic rich. But again, he's been around for thousands of years, so he's got homes and apartments all the way around, because he has to keep moving and changing his identity. Otherwise, people realize he's immortal to a point. He's obviously heroic. And then I've also given him the floor hounded, which is not in the sense of physical people hounding him, but actually Morgan Le Fay is able to appear to him, talk to him, wind him up, try to distract him at times, which also came from the trait Iron Will, because he has to resist her on a regular basis, and that's where the Iron Will sort of came into it as well. So that's his background. He's actually Lancelot of Legend. He's gone through lots of iterations of his name. He was once Lawrence of Arabia, and has now, in this time, and now in World War II, he's now Lance Claymore. But he has, yes, that's me, the Eldritch Knight.
I got to tell everybody, I love this character. I mean, I absolutely love it. I cannot wait to see him in action. Now, anybody watching this on YouTube later who is a Marvel Comics aficionado, and you want to go into the comments and say, that's not how Morgan Le Fay is, you know what? In my game, that is Morgan Le Fay. We are technically on Earth 616, but we're on Earth 616 Upchurch style. So Morgan Le Fay in our world is trapped in this amulet, and I freaking love it. Stu, talk to us about Lodestar.
Okay, yeah, Lodestar, which means the guiding star. So she obviously has several names. One is her Krylorian name. She is Krylorian. And that is Delar Brillians. It's kind of cack, but you know it works for the character. And then her Earth name is Alia Darwish, because she was a member of the naval forces of Krylorian forces, and she was in a scout ship chasing down a villain of somebody who had been some former terrorist, and she was chasing him down. She chased him to Earth and then crash landed in Earth after a short battle in space above Earth. This would have been around about sort of 1900, somewhere like there, turn of the last century. Crash landed in the desert, and she was found by a Bedouin tribe who then adopted her as their own. So she, around the camp and around sort of normal people, she wears full Bedouin or burqas or things which, of course, cover her skin from head to foot. So that's how she disguises herself from the general populace. That, and of course, she's got the power of cloak. So if she is ever, you know, she can use that as well to sort of help disguise herself from the general people. And so nobody really knows that she's there apart from one person. And that person happens to be Lawrence of Arabia, who obviously turns out to be Lance Claymore, or a very powerful Eldritch Knight from a long time ago. And she joined, as with did many of her adopted tribe, joined Lawrence against the Ottoman Turks in World War I. And so she's adopted that tribal name, which actually means sky explorer or explorer from the sky, depending on how you translate it. And then, of course, many years later, after living in the desert, she heard obviously there was World War II had occurred, and Great Britain had asked for volunteers to fight the Great Fight, and a certain person appeared again in a different format, as it were, with a different name, but obviously they recognized each other, and he recognized her potential for helping to guide people. And so she ended up working with a long-range desert group, which of course eventually morphed into the SAS, or was configured alongside them, if you like, and then eventually that became groups that would have been involved in the fight through Italy. So that's how I thought she got into this sort of whole sort of Italian campaign, basically. And that, and like I say, the cloaking keeps us sort of like safe from normal people's sort of looking too closely at her. Now, the tags that we've used sort of as part of this background, so obviously as a general sort of thing, linguist was another one that was first in my mind, because obviously she'd speak Krylorian, she would speak Galactic Standard, but she'd also need to know English, Arabic, potentially I thought Italian as well, because that's East Africa, and French, because again there's French colonies all over the Middle East as well. So I thought, those two languages would probably be part and parcel of what she'd learned. A tag of astrogation on Krylorian ships. There wasn't really, that tag didn't really exist, but I thought that sort of fits with what she does or what she did. So she understands Krylorian ships and how they fly and how they're psionically controlled. Alien heritage, of course. And my little line from that was, ain't from Mazora, which, of course, comes out of Guardians of the Galaxy. And extreme appearance, which is one of the classic ones for an alien. She really, obviously she's not sort of monstrous or anything, but she's bright pink, and it would be very obvious to anyone that was looking at her that she wasn't from this planet. And then the last one was obligation of duty, which I sort of saw for the military duty, but I also it kind of mixes with the Bedouin tribe as well. She probably has an obligation to her adopted tribe, a sort of extended family within there as well, to protect them if anything ever happens to them.
I like it.
Yeah.
And we will dive a little deeper into Lodestar and what brought her to Earth throughout the campaign.
Yeah.
So next week, we'll do a deep dive into our Archer and our Time Lord and our mysterious character that's going to be played by Jim. However, I want to set the scene for next week so that when we get going, we can just dive into the action. So imagine you're looking down at the cover of a brand new comic book. It says Strange Tales of World War II. You flip open that cover and they see a big splash panel at the front. And it's a scene. You see 5 shadowy figures in front of a large campaign table, and facing them is a British general and a man dressed in a suit. And they're leaning over some dispatches and messages. The man in the suit looks up. All right, listen. We finally got the Italian campaign, well, can't say wrapped up, but at least the fascists have finally fallen. Yes, we're in 1943. And in a large part due to the clandestine and covert operations of the 5 of you, individually and together and in small groups. I know that we've kept you a secret. You're not the flashy propaganda model that the invaders or the all-winners are. Not to say that Captain America and his bunch aren't hard chargers, but we think you've been more effective in the shadows and behind the scenes. Well, we've got a mission for you. Something's come up. We heard chatter, and I mean, I've worked with you guys now for a while, so nothing should surprise me. But we've heard chatter that a man from the future, going by the name of Trevor Fitzroy, has appeared and has promised the Axis powers a victory in this war in exchange for something. Now, as weird as that is, we had other things to worry about, but we asked Brian Fallsworth, aka the Union Jack, to head there. It's to the hotel of the Grand Albergo del Rose on the Isle of Rhodes in the Aegean Sea. That's where this Fitzroy said he wanted to meet the Axis power, somewhere not really neutral, but not exactly overrun with Nazi forces, for his negotiations. Well, the Union Jack got there, made his first communication with us. He was reconning the hotel, said he had eyes on this Fitzroy. Skinny fellow, green hair of all things, but then he missed his next 2 comms. He's been missing now for over a day. We need the 5 of you to fly to the Aegean Sea, to the Isle of Rhodes. Your mission is 2 parts. Find Union Jack and rescue him or avenge him. Determine the real level of threat by this Trevor Fitzroy. Either discount it, nab him if he is a threat, or remove him from the playing field if you can't take him out. We know that there are going to be members of the Battle Axis there, but we don't have verification of who they are, so you need to be prepared to face stiff resistance. Some of them have gone with the Red Skull to the Carpathian Mountains, apparently to negotiate with a vampire king to help the Axis power. That's where the invaders are headed. So this is going to be up to you with no real backup. You've got to get there. Get Union Jack. Deal with this time traveler if this is real. And get back here. Do you have any questions? Excellent. Your wheels up in an hour. Make us proud. With that, we flip through. The next panel of the comic book opens up on a disguised civilian cargo carrier taking off and flying out towards the Aegean Sea. We'll flip the next page to see what happens to our heroes next week at the same Garblag time, same Garblag channel, as we begin a prelude to the Cataclysm of Kang. I want to thank everybody who's stayed with us through Twitch, through our character creation, and anybody who's watching us later on YouTube, thank you. If you're watching us on YouTube, please like and subscribe and add a comment, good or bad, if you see fit. And then, hey, if you get a chance, check us out live on Twitch. If you're watching us on Twitch, please go take a look at the YouTube channel. Give me a like and a subscribe on that as well. If you'd like to talk about this game or any of the other wonderful games that Garblag runs, come join us on our Discord. We're all there. We're all talking about role-playing games and movies and books and TV shows and everything that strikes our fancy. We'd love to have you join us there as well. Now, for the rest of this week, we have an incredibly special treat starting tomorrow. On Thursday, at the exact same time, our own Pete, Garblag himself, the great Garblag, is going to be introducing his own game, Heroic Deeds. We're talking old school adventures with modern mechanics. And he's taken a classic D&D adventure, the Red Hand of Doom, and he's modernized it into his system, and you're going to get to see some amazing players tackle that using his incredible game. Looking forward to watching that. Looking forward to playing the game myself as soon as I get my hands on it. Then next week we can roll back around, and I believe Mele will be back on Tuesday with some more Coriolis. You can't miss that campaign, long running and fantastic. If you've got some time and you're an insomniac in Europe, or if you're in North America like I am, and you want to check out one of the friends of the channel, The Adventures in the Lollygagging, tomorrow at, let's say, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, absolute dead middle of the night in Europe. You can see me playing a surly werewolf in Werewolf the Apocalypse, 5th edition. We're enjoying our chronicle, and it's been a lot of fun. And then if you would like to check out the Adventures in Lollygagging on Friday, also at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you will see me once again in the GM seat, once again doing character creation as we began Cubicle 7's Wrath and Glory, the Litany of the Lost Adventures. I'm going to be throwing a few extra adventures in there as well, because I'd like to see everybody get to tear up at least once. That is all of the players that I don't mercilessly kill, because it is a grim, dark world, and I do love killing players. So join us for all the wonderful games this week and next week. Join us on the Discord. And any of the players have anything to add? Fan-friggin-tastic. So I'll close off with Stanley's Excelsior, and we'll see you next week. Good night.
Bye.
Night.